At the very start, I was betrayed by my girlfriend and transported to the flood apocalypse. The spring rain promised by the Central Meteorological Observatory ended up pouring for more than 5 months. When I woke up, I was soaked and freezing, and the wound on the back of my neck burned with pain. The air was thick with the smell of mold, and outside the window the rain poured down like a waterfall. The original owner of this body was an ordinary office worker. After the flood swallowed the city, he hid at home with half a year's worth of food stockpiled. But just last night, he tried to salvage a gas cylinder from the 5th floor, was discovered by a small gang in the building, and after a brutal beating, I was sent here directly. I had just torn up a white shirt to bandage the wound when someone knocked on the security door. "Brotherly, please, could you lend me something to eat?" Through the peephole, the college girl next door, Chi Xinshin, was standing outside. She was wearing a tight tank top and denim shorts, and her figure was extremely well developed. I remembered that she had found herself a blonde punk boyfriend and moved in next door last year. When the heavy rain had been falling for over a month, they ran out of food and came to borrow some. The original owner gave them a bag of rice and 2 bottles of beef sauce. Later, I saw her all dressed up, going door to door begging for food. In the apocalypse, love and dignity are less real than a mouthful of food. No, I refused cleanly and decisively, then continued doing push-ups to assess this body's strength. The knocking continued for a while, and Chi Xinshin finally left. Soon, an argument came from next door. "Did you get any?" "No." "Bullshit. He gave us rice last time. How could he not have any?" "Tear your tank top a little more, put on the stockings, and slip on the high heels." I refuse to believe no one will give you anything. I ignored it. A habit formed in the special forces. When the situation is more desperate, you have to maintain your physical fitness even more. As long as I recover 30% of my strength, dealing with the scum in this building will be more than easy enough. Bang. The door was smashed hard. "Boss, it's this unit. He was trying to sneak out last night." Through the peephole, I saw a bald man blocking the doorway with several lackeys. The heavily tattooed man kicked away the gauze and iodine on the floor. Zhao Ziqiang, formerly a ride-hailing driver, had become the bully of this building after the flood, leading people to loot every household, with half of all found supplies to be handed over. Li Long, in this building, what I say is the rule. The heavily tattooed man swung an iron hammer and smashed a dent into the security door. "Open up. Hand over half the stuff in your apartment." "Fine." I agreed readily. I happened to be short on tools, and that hammer looked pretty good. As soon as the door opened, the heavily tattooed man was about to charge in when I drove a kick straight into his chest, sending him flying backward. "Damn, you're asking to die?" Zhao Ziqiang's bald head lunged forward, and I threw 3 punches in quick succession. Nosebleed, tears, and saliva mixed together, turning his whole face into a complete mess. He wailed incoherently, unable to form a full sentence. I heard wind from behind my head and tilted aside to dodge it. The sneak attack from the triangular-eyed man slammed into the wall, blasting out a hole and exposing red bricks. Something's wrong. The force behind that punch isn't normal. With my current body, punching with that kind of effect would break my bones. But his hand was completely unharmed. Only the skin had turned dark and looked abnormal. There was no time to think. I grabbed the heavily tattooed man's iron hammer and brought it down, breaking the arm he raised to block. Then followed with a flying kick that sent him more than 10 feet away. Zhao Ziqiang's face was covered in blood, and when his eyes met mine, every hair on his body stood on end. The fear of being stared at by a ferocious beast made him scramble toward the stairwell on all fours. "Just you wait." I didn't chase after him. I shut the door, sat down, and gasped for breath. Those 3 punches just now had nearly dislocated my arm. This body is too weak. It had been cooped up for half a year, and the nutrition hadn't kept up. If Zhao Ziqiang hadn't run, I would only have been able to risk killing 1 or 2 of them to establish my authority, at the cost of collapsing from exhaustion and being left at anyone's mercy. Outside the door came the click-clack of high heels, mixed with a man's roar. "Get out and beg for food. If you can't get any, don't come back." Chi Xinshin was shoved out the door, nearly slipping on the wall dust, and ended up pressing her whole body against the peephole. Her camisole had been torn open in several places, with an A-line bodycon skirt, black stockings full of holes, and 10-centimeter heels. To be honest, her figure was indeed impressive, but that had nothing to do with me. A woman willing to let others manipulate her isn't worth pitying. I went back to the kitchen, looked at the only gas cylinder left, and made up my mind. I wouldn't wait any longer. I turned on the stove and made an end-of-the-world feast. Canned fruit, canned beef, fermented black bean fish, blistered green peppers, fish fragrant shredded pork, and dried shrimp with yuba soup. The aroma drifted out through the window, and the gas cylinder finally gave out completely just as the last dish came off the stove. I had to eat. Recovering my strength required energy, and huddling inside, scrimping on food, would only make me weaker and weaker until I'd be eaten by others in the end. I'd only just slowly chewed and swallowed 2 bites when Zhang Yang's voice came from the window next door. "Li Long, you cooked?" I smelled it. "Beef, fermented black bean fish, fish-fragrant shredded pork. Can you let me have a bite?" I ignored him. "If you just give me 1 bite to eat, I'll have Qi Xinxin sleep with you. She's pretty and has a great body. I guarantee she'll do as I say." "Get lost." I put down my chopsticks. "Disgusting." Zhang Yong quieted down. That half bucket of dry instant noodles had probably let him barely hold out. But not for long. When people are driven into a corner, all morality and shame are just for show. As it was getting dark, I finished my last bite of food and began to act. Without fire, stored food was useless. I had to get the gas cylinder on the 5th floor. After setting up several small traps in the apartment to prevent burglary, I fastened the fire escape rope, climbed out the window, and made my way down along the water pipe. The torrential rain poured over me as I pricked up my ears and listened to the movement on every floor. From the 16th to the 5th floor, only 3 rooms were confirmed occupied, and 2 had lights on. They were probably Zhao Ziqiang's stronghold. On the outdoor AC unit of the 5th floor, the gas cylinder was still there. I tied it up with the fire escape rope, then searched the surface of the water again. The floodwater was black as ink. The city that had once been brightly lit was left with only a few scattered windows still glowing, and behind them were probably bullies like Zhao Ziqiang, monopolizing generators and fuel. I was just thinking of catching a few fish to improve my meals when I suddenly realized something was wrong. At the receding current, I scooped up a big carp with my bare hands. Just as I was about to continue, a plico leaped out of the water and lunged straight into my arms. This kind of trash fish that even anglers despise. Since when had it become so fierce? I knocked it aside. The plico struggled violently a few times. Then a huge hole suddenly split open in its belly. A crayfish crawled out from inside. Its claws clamped onto the white-eyed plico as it dragged it toward the bottom. My scalp went numb. A normal crayfish could never actively prey on a plico, much less burst out from its stomach. The things in this water had mutated. I knocked the big carp unconscious and tucked it at my waist, hauled up the gas cylinder and the alcohol I'd unexpectedly fished up, and quickly climbed back to the 16th floor. I had just carried everything into the apartment when the neighbors started making a scene again. "I told you to go borrow food, and you want to fish up coffee? Can coffee fill your stomach?" Qi Xinxin was soaked through, her hair hastily tied up with a plastic bag. Wrapped in a woven sack, her voice full of ingratiation. I found 5 bags of coffee and 1 bag of milk powder. I gave 3 bags to Brother Chong, and there are still 2 bags of coffee and half a bag of milk powder left. Damn it, are you stupid or what? You salvage things, and then give half to someone else. Don't be mad. The milk powder is nutritious. It's for you. I only want 1 bag of coffee. I didn't keep listening. Looking at the big carp on the cutting board, my mind was filled with that crayfish that had burst out of the fish's belly. This world was more dangerous than I had imagined. The night grew deep. The rainstorm pounded against the windows, as if the whole world were collapsing. I had just lain down to rest when unusual commotion came from next door. "It's all your fault." After drinking the coffee, "I'm so hungry now that I can't sleep." "Sorry. What's the use of being sorry? Get your ass next door right now. Whether you strip naked or trade your life. I don't care what method you use. Ask him for some food and bring it back." "No, I can't." At this moment, Qi Xinxin was wearing a pale yellow nightgown. Without makeup, she looked utterly haggard. The beauty once hidden beneath her daytime delicate makeup was long gone. Only a faint trace of her former looks remained. "Why can't you? I'm starving to death. So what is it that you still can't do?" "Zhang Yong, don't be like this. We're together because you love me, and I love you too." Tears poured from Qi Xinxin like a spring. "Let's endure tonight somehow and get through it. At daybreak, we'll go register at the stairwell and salvage things from the water. We'll definitely be able to bring some up before dark. Even if it can't be eaten, as long as it's useful, we can trade it to Brother Chong for some food." "Damn it, do you really have to make me lose my temper?" Zhang Yong roared until his voice was nearly hoarse. "What do you mean you love me and I love you? Can love fill your stomach? You went into the water to salvage stuff like an idiot and gave half of it away for nothing, and that's still not enough? Now you have to drag me into being an idiot with you too? Damn, it was the same before, that trash job you introduced me to, making me go to work and sit in an office every day, where it wasn't even convenient to take a nap. The boss makes 1 million in profit a month, and he only pays me a salary of 10,000? That black-hearted capitalist, sucking blood right off me. I curse his damn grandmother. Only trash like you would help the boss count the money after being sold off by him. Working overtime from dawn to dusk, willingly being a workhorse. Stop talking nonsense and hurry up next door to ask for food. Li Long cooked at noon today. I smelled it all. Beef, vegetables, fish, and shrimp. Everything. Zhang Yong directly grabbed Qi Xinxin by her long hair and dragged her toward the door. Qi Xinxin cried out in pain again and again, grabbing Zhang Yong's arm as she was dragged along, pleading, "If you don't want to go, then stay home and wait. Tomorrow I promise I'll bring food back. Definitely better than coffee and milk powder." "You really take me for a 3-year-old, huh?" Zhang Yong yanked Qi Xinxin and slammed her against the door. "While you still somewhat look human and other people might still want you. Hurry up, put on some makeup, and get the hell out to beg someone. If you want me to go salvage supplies, I might as well give you to Brother Chong. No matter how cheap you are, you can still be traded for a few days of full meals, and if you're lucky, you might even get to tag along with Brother Chong." "You can't." "What do you mean you can't?" "I can't." "You've read more books, so translate it for me." "What the hell do you mean by I can't?" Zhang Yong cursed and shouted loudly, making his hunger-stricken stomach ache so much that he bent over involuntarily, then rushed back into the bedroom and pulled out the last 2 cups of instant noodles from under the bed. To stay alive, anything goes. You don't need to go to Li Long anymore. That idiot acts all smug and even offended Brother Chong. Sooner or later, he's dead meat. Qi Xinxin was curled up beside the sofa, staring blankly in a daze. Then she saw Zhang Yong come into the living room holding 2 cups of instant noodles. He had already opened one and was gnawing at it in big bites, pouring all the seasoning packets into his mouth too. Where did the instant noodles come from? Smelling the fragrance of the noodles and seasoning packets, Qi Xinxin, who was starving half to death, had her eyes light up. "I'll give you a little." Zhang Yong broke off a small piece of the noodle cake and tossed it to Qi Xinxin. "That time I told you Annie Zhang upstairs wanted to borrow a box of instant noodles. Only an idiot like you would agree. Actually, I hid all the instant noodles and secretly ate a little every day. Now there are only 2 cups left. After you eat this half, go to sleep and get some proper rest, so you'll have the strength to serve Brother Chong tomorrow." Qi Xinxin was starving. She took the noodle cake Zhang Yong handed her and stuffed the whole thing into her mouth at once. But when she heard that Zhang Yong had secretly hidden the instant noodles, her tears mixed with the taste of the noodles and flowed into her mouth, unbearably bitter. Cough, cough. Qi Xinxin coughed violently, and the instant noodles she had just chewed up fell onto the floor. Grief and hunger made her feel as if her heart were being cut by knives, and she kept retching. "Zhang Yong, you actually lied to me. You said you hadn't eaten all day. You were lying to me the whole time. If only you could eat, would I have fought with you for it? I'd rather go hungry myself. Who told you to spit it out?" Zhang Yong said impatiently, erupting into curses before Qi Xinxin could finish speaking. "You wasted my instant noodles. Anyway, I won't share any more with you. Whether you eat or not is up to you. Tomorrow you still have to come with me to see Brother Chong." "No." Qi Xinxin sobbed. "I'd rather smash my head against the wall and die than ever go to Zhao Ziqiang. Then go die right now." Zhang Yong didn't hesitate at all. He took the kitchen cleaver out of the kitchen and slammed it onto the table. "Afraid you won't manage to kill yourself by smashing your head, so I found you a knife. Why? Why are you treating me like this? I love you so much. I wanted us to get through this hard time together, properly." Qi Xinxin unsteadily stood up, swaying a little. "When the rain stops, when the sky clears, the world will return to normal order again. I'll go to work and we'll save money. Damn it. Say one more word of nonsense to me, and believe it or not, I'll hack you to death right now." Zhang Yong was furious and roared. "Now get back and go to sleep, immediately. Right now? If Brother Chong doesn't take a liking to you tomorrow, you'll be in for it. Ah, you're crazy, you crazy woman." Clang. Qi Xinxin gripped the cleaver with both hands and rushed out of the room. Zhang Yong covered his left forearm and chased after her. "Put the knife down. You're going to see Brother Chong tomorrow, and I don't feel like beating you up right now. Zhang Yong, don't come over here." Qi Xinxin's eyes were bloodshot as she waved the cleaver wildly. "Take one more step forward, and at worst neither of us will live. Then just stay outside." Just now, Qi Xinxin had suddenly grabbed the cleaver. Zhang Yong was caught off guard, and his arm was slashed, though the wound wasn't deep. But when a woman goes crazy, it's still a bit frightening. Zhang Yong looked at Qi Xinxin as she slashed wildly with the cleaver. "Tomorrow I'll go say hello to Brother Chong and see who in this building would dare take you in." After saying that, Zhang Yong shut the door. After hacking around wildly for a while, Qi Xinxin finally stopped from exhaustion. She silently stared at the door of her home. Last year, she had rented this place full of hope and joy, and the scene of moving in with Zhang Yong still seemed to be right before her eyes. And now, Qi Xinxin took 2 steps and knocked her head against the wall twice, but in the end did not call out Zhang Yong's name again. Turning around, she knocked on Li Long's door for who knew how many times. "Brotherly, please help me." The neighboring apartments were all the same layout. The soundproofing wasn't particularly good, nor was it particularly bad. Li Long really did want to help this young couple by bringing a knife. They were just too noisy. Li Long would rather the young couple be all lovey-dovey, making love every night. At worst, he'd just overhear them in bed. With this neither dying nor living drama, if they didn't settle it within a few days, Li Long would go to their door with a knife and put them out of their misery. "Help you with what?" Li Long opened the door, holding the alcohol lamp he had just made. In the light, Qi Xinxin's eyes were red and swollen. She was still wearing that pale yellow night dress, a little loose and half transparent in the firelight. The night dress only covered the upper half of her thighs. Below that, her pale legs were exposed, her bare feet on the ground. She was still gripping the cleaver handle with both hands in front of her, and there were still a few streaks of bright red blood on the blade. Together with Qi Xinxin's somewhat fragile expression and cracked lips, a morbid flush on her face, bloodshot eyes. "I want to switch from the cleaver to a knife, a small knife that can be hidden on my body." Qi Xinxin gripped the handle with both hands and handed the cleaver to Li Long. In her panic, she hurriedly lifted her nightgown and wiped the bloodstains off the cleaver. "The cleaver is too big to carry out. A small knife can be hidden. Tomorrow I'll go fish things out of the water, use the small knife to cut the rope tied around me, and drift along with the water. If I'm lucky, maybe I'll survive." "Oh." Li Long raised the alcohol lamp and looked Qi Xinxin up and down. Zhang Yong really hadn't lied. Qi Xinxin had been starving for so long, yet those 2 huge breasts hadn't shrunk at all. Qi Xinxin was still pleading, "Brotherly, please, that bastard Zhang Yong said he'll give me to Zhao Ziqiang tomorrow in exchange for food. I really have nowhere else to turn." Li Long was instantly stunned. Somewhat doubtful, he asked, "That coward Zhang Yong would dare do something like that?" It wasn't that he looked down on Zhang Yong, but in the past 6 months of the Great Flood, he had seen Zhang Yong act like a coward several times in his memory. Zhao Ziqiang and the others had repeatedly come to his door to curse at and mock him, and Zhang Yong hadn't even dared make a sound. He even had his girlfriend repeatedly seduce others to borrow food. If someone like that isn't a coward, then what is? But he hadn't expected that such a spineless wretch would be so overbearing in front of his own girlfriend. Tears streaming down her face, Qi Xinxin kept pleading nonstop. Li Long was still hesitating, but the commotion here seemed to have caught the attention of the people watching downstairs. At that moment, a burst of footsteps rang out. Although they were deliberately kept low, Li Long and Qi Xinxin noticed them immediately. Qi Xinxin instantly turned deathly pale with fright. Trembling as she said, "Brotherly, please." Li Long said in a low voice, "Go back first, or it'll be too late." Hearing this, Qi Xinxin turned around in panic and ran anxiously back to her own door, pounding on it desperately. "Zhang Yong, open the door, hurry, and open it." But Zhang Yong behind the door gritted his teeth and cursed, "If you can't borrow food, don't even think about coming in." Qi Xinxin instantly fell into despair and collapsed to the floor against the door. "Zhang Yong, you bastard, I'm your girlfriend. How can you treat me like this? Sob, please, open the door." Yet Zhang Yong remained unmoved, keeping the door shut without letting go. Even Li Long across from them couldn't stand watching this. "Haha, it's that female college student Brother Chong has his eye on. Dressed so provocatively, she really has something. Grab her, boys, let's all have some fun." 2 men rushed up from downstairs, and the moment they saw Qi Xinxin, they immediately shouted excitedly. They charged upstairs using both hands and feet, grinning lewdly without stop. Seeing this, Qi Xinxin's face filled with terror as she pounded desperately on the front door. "Zhang Yong, open the door, hurry, and open it." "Ah?" At that moment, the earlier man with the triangular eyes rushed up. Before he had even planted his foot firmly on the stair, he lunged at Qi Xinxin. Terrified, Qi Xinxin let out a scream and hurriedly dodged toward Li Long's home. But there was only that little bit of space between the 2 facing doors, and in just 2 or 3 steps, she was backed into the corner. Frightened, Qi Xinxin wanted to run to the rooftop, but she hadn't eaten for days, and her arms and legs were weak. She had barely lifted her foot when the man behind her grabbed her calf. That slender calf was still covered in black stockings. With one yank from the triangular-eyed man, there was a rip, tearing a hole and exposing her fair skin. This sight made the balding fat man chasing behind let out excited shouts. Ha ha ha, so slutty, grab her, old Huang. Triangular-eyed old Huang also struggled to his feet and pounced at Qi Xinshin again. Qi Xinshin stumbled and dropped straight to her knees on the steps, the pain making it impossible for her to stand up at all. Seeing old Huang pounce over with an evil look on his face, Qi Xinshin trembled in fear and kept screaming. Bang! Just then, the security door to Li Long's home suddenly opened. It slammed hard into old Huang. The powerful impact sent the skinny old Huang flying. The next second, Li Long rushed out and viciously thrust a long spear. Poochie! The spear tip made from a spliced fruit knife pierced straight into old Huang's chest. Then Li Long flicked the spear tip upward, and blood immediately gushed out. The lewd grin on the balding fat man's face instantly froze, and he stood there in shock. Li Long shot him a fierce glare and raised his spear. The fat man cried out in terror, turned around, and stumbled into the stairwell. He rolled down like a meatball, and in the end there was only a scream. It was unclear whether he had fallen to his death. Li Long did not chase after him, but instead stood blocking the doorway, to prevent Qi Xinshin from taking the chance to slip into his home and lock him outside. Brotherly. Qi Xinshin came back to her senses and immediately looked up at Li Long pleadingly. Li Long frowned slightly. Seeing how pitiful she looked, he thought for a moment and said, "Wait here." With that, he went back inside. After a short while, he came back holding 2 small buns. He casually tossed them over and said, "Take these. You'd better keep them for yourself. Don't give them to Zhang Yong. That guy can't be trusted." With that, he moved to shut the door. But Qi Xinshin hurriedly lunged over and grabbed his arm, pleading, "Brotherly, no, I don't want to go back. Please, Zhang Yong is a beast. He'll definitely snatch away the buns you gave me. If you give them to me this time, he'll definitely force me to come again next time. Brotherly, please let me stay." Li Long frowned. He did not trust this woman. After all, they were not familiar with each other. Seeing him hesitate, Qi Xinshin immediately grew anxious and struggled to stand up. But as soon as she did, her vision went black and her legs went weak, and she almost collapsed again. Li Long reacted quickly and grabbed her at once. Her soft, delicate body immediately crashed into his arms, making Li Long's heart stir. It was summer, and he was bare-chested. While Qi Xinshin was wearing a camisole, pressed together like that, they were practically skin to skin. There seemed to be a faint fragrance coming from the girl, constantly drifting into Li Long's nose and making his heart itch. He glanced again at that cleavage straining under the pressure, and his heartbeat quickened a little more. Li Long quietly averted his gaze, suppressing the strange feelings in his heart, and asked, "Are you okay?" Qi Xinshin quickly shook her head and said nervously, "Brotherly, I'm just hungry, a little hypoglycemic. I'm fine." Seeing her pale face, Li Long let out a helpless sigh. Zhang Yong was definitely not going to open the door. If he left her here, she would either starve to death or be killed by Zhao Ziqiang's lackeys. As a soldier, he could not just stand by and watch a female college student be humiliated. After thinking for a moment, Li Long stared at Qi Xinshin. "Think it through. I don't have much food at home either, and I don't keep freeloaders. I understand. I can do anything. Please believe me." Overjoyed, Qi Xinshin quickly looked up at Li Long and repeatedly promised that she would definitely be useful. This little girl could even dive underwater to find some food. Maybe she might come in handy. Li Long comforted himself inwardly, then nodded and said, "All right, come with me." With that, he brought Qi Xinshin back inside and shut the security door behind him. But at that moment, the door opposite suddenly opened, and Zhang Yong stuck his head out and shouted, "Li Long, that's my girlfriend. If you're taking her away, aren't you going to compensate me?" Li Long stopped in his tracks and looked at Zhang Yong across from him with contempt. "So you know she's your girlfriend too? Then what were you doing just now? She was desperately begging you to open the door, and you ignored her. And now you remember she's your girlfriend? Or else, why don't you take her back?" Li Long's single remark left Zhang Yong speechless. Taking her back was absolutely impossible. One more person meant one more mouth to feed, and there wasn't enough food at home. But he was even more unwilling to just let Li Long take Qi Xinshin away like this. So he growled, "Qi Xinshin, borrow some food and come right back. I'm warning you, the people outside don't have good intentions. This is your home." Behind Li Long, Qi Xinshin was sobbing silently. She didn't dare argue, nor did she dare ask Li Long for help. Seeing this, Li Long couldn't help frowning, and simply stepped aside, saying to her, "If you haven't made up your mind, It's still not too late to change your mind. Take those 2 loaves of bread and go. This. Qi Xinshin instantly panicked and quickly looked up at Li Long brotherly. That's not what I mean. I've made up my mind. I'm not going back. He's a bastard. I won't trust him again. Li Long gave no particular response and said calmly, That's good. I'll be blunt with you first. If you want to go back, I won't force you to stay either. But if you come to me to borrow food again later, that will be absolutely impossible. Do you understand? No, I won't go back. Then tell him that. Qi Xinshin's heart trembled, and she glanced sideways at Zhang Yong across from the security door. Zhang Yong's face was full of anger as he pointed at Qi Xinshin and cursed. You slut, I told you to borrow food, and you ended up lending yourself out? Why aren't you getting back here right now? He was cursing with his mouth, but his eyes were fixed on the 2 loaves of bread in Qi Xinshin's hands. Qi Xinshin exploded in an instant, all the grievances she had suffered over the past 6 months surging up at once. Her full chest heaved unevenly as she cried out, Zhang Yong, you forced me to this. We've been together for so long, and I don't owe you anything. During the day I went to school and worked part-time. And at night when I came back I still had to do housework and wait on you. And you? Every day all you know is playing games and hanging around with those good-for-nothing friends. Don't you know what they come to the house for every time? You bastard, you coward. All you know is throwing your weight around at home. This time I've finally seen you clearly for what you are. You're useless. For a bite to eat, you actually wanted to hand me over to Zhao Ziqiang and the others. You asshole. You want food, right? Fine. These 2 loaves of bread are for you. We're completely breaking up. Wiping away her tears, she threw the 2 loaves of bread in her hand over. Zhang Yong opposite her was instantly overjoyed. He didn't care at all about Qi Xinshin's insults, and afraid of moving too slowly, he immediately rushed out from his home. After picking up the bread from the ground, he kept watch of the commotion downstairs from time to time. Once he had the bread, he quickly darted back inside and slammed the door shut with a bang. From beginning to end, he didn't look at Qi Xinshin even once. Qi Xinshin stared blankly at the tightly shut door, completely stunned. She suddenly felt a pang of regret. Why did I give food to a bastard like that? How could I be so muddle-headed? What if Li Long won't give me any more food? Thinking of this, she was immediately overcome with sorrow and couldn't help bursting into loud sobs. Li Long hadn't stopped her from start to finish. Watching her throw out the bread, not only was he not angry inside, he actually thought a little more highly of the girl. This was a girl with principles, with food so scarce, and she herself not having eaten anything for several days. She had still been willing to use this bit of food to make a clean break with that relationship, which showed that her character wasn't bad. In the current environment, where moral order had collapsed, a companion with a kind heart was the most reassuring. He then closed the door, went back to the bedroom, and took out another loaf of bread to hand to her, saying, Hey, there's water in the kitchen too. Pour some yourself. Okay, thank you. Qi Xinshin wiped away her tears, picked up the bread, and immediately began wolfing it down. But she was eating too fast, and after only 2 bites, she choked. Seeing this, Li Long immediately handed her a glass of water. Qi Xinshin hurriedly began taking small sips. The malty aroma and sweetness of the bread gave her a long-lost sense of happiness. Although she was extremely hungry, she stopped after eating only half of it, forcibly suppressing the urge to finish it and putting the bread away. Li Long sat on the chair and, seeing this, asked, Why aren't you eating anymore? Qi Xinshin swallowed and said, Brother Li, I'm full. If I save some, this bread can last me another meal. Li Long couldn't help nodding. This girl really was someone with a sense of proportion who knew when to advance and when to retreat. Being able to control her own desires even at a time like this was quite rare. Seeing how cautious she looked, Li Long said, Eat it. I still have bread here. You have low blood sugar. If you don't replenish your sugar in time and something goes wrong, I won't save you. Qi Xinshin's heart jolted, and she immediately began to hesitate, wanting to save some food, but also afraid that what Li Long said was true. If she collapsed at a time like this, she really would become a burden. Seeing that she was still wavering, Li Long frowned. If I tell you to eat, then eat. Qi Xinshin didn't dare say anything more and hurriedly took out the bag of bread. But this time she ate very slowly, nibbling at the crumbs in small bites and savoring the delicious bread. A trace of color gradually returned to her pale face as well. Li Long admired her curvy figure, especially the sexy long legs exposed beneath those torn stockings, which had a kind of shattered beauty. As Qi Xinshin ate the bread, she gradually also sensed Li Long's unusual gaze. She instantly felt a little ashamed, subconsciously pressed her legs together, and tugged at her short skirt. But helplessly, The skirt was too short, and her figure was too good. Those damaged stockings simply couldn't cover it. Li Long also came back to his senses at the sight and immediately stood up, saying, "That second bedroom is empty. You can sleep there tonight." Qi Xinxin nodded somewhat flusteredly, while at the same time letting out a long sigh of relief in her heart. She also understood what price she ought to pay for moving into this neighbor's home of her own accord. But Li Long didn't make any demands in that regard, which relieved her. Although she was mentally prepared, she really wasn't ready yet. Li Long no longer paid her any attention and went out to drag old Huang's corpse, that man with the triangular eyes, into the living room. Fortunately, most of the bloodstains had been left in the hallway and hadn't gotten all over the house. Qi Xinxin watched Li Long moving the corpse around in terror, so frightened that she shrank into the corner, covering her mouth and not daring to make a sound. Li Long ignored her and quickly stripped off old Huang's shirt. Old Huang was very thin, practically skin and bones, and Li Long had punched a large hole through his chest, leaving it crimson all over. Li Long carefully examined the man's body, searching for anything different from an ordinary person. But after turning him over all around, he really couldn't find anything wrong. This was clearly the body of a normal person, yet his ability to smash a wall apart with his bare hands was truly bizarre. Could there be something strange inside his body? Li Long was suspicious, but he had never studied anatomy or anything like that. Besides, killing someone was easy enough. Dissecting a corpse was a bit too perverse. Even for him, it was a little hard to accept. Watching the busy Li Long from the side and seeing him stop, Qi Xinxin suppressed her fear and asked, "You, what are you looking for?" Li Long glanced at her and asked, "Have you noticed anything different about Zhao Ziqiang and the others compared to before?" Qi Xinxin froze for a moment, thought about it, and said softly, "They seem to have become more vicious. Previously, Zhao Ziqiang definitely wouldn't have dared to kill anyone." Li Long was speechless. That was as good as saying nothing. In times of disaster like this, order collapses and moral standards decline. For the sake of survival, what wouldn't humans do? Li Long shook his head and had no choice but to drag the corpse up. Just as he was about to throw it out the window, he suddenly thought of something. He got up and fetched some nails from the entryway, stuffing them into old Huang's corpse. If there really were mutated creatures, then if one ate a corpse full of nails and got stuck to death, that would count as eliminating a menace. Only then did he throw the corpse out. Li Long washed his hands and turned to look at Qi Xinxin. "I'm tired. I'm going in to rest first. You should get some rest early too. Also, without my permission, don't open the door no matter who knocks, or don't blame me for turning hostile," Li Long said coldly. Qi Xinxin quickly nodded, her tone firm. "Brotherly, don't worry. I definitely won't open the door carelessly." Li Long didn't respond. He first went to lock the security door from the inside, then entered the master bedroom and locked the door tight. But he didn't actually go to sleep. Instead, he quickly turned on his phone and connected to the living room camera. The camera had long since been fully charged and could remain on standby for 1 to 2 days. Li Long naturally had no use for it normally, but things were different now. He had turned on the camera in advance just now, and now, lying on the bed, he used it to observe Qiao Xinxin. Only after Qi Xinxin saw Li Long close the bedroom door did she truly relax. Leaning against the wall as she slowly crouched down, she stared blankly into space, not knowing what she was thinking about. A moment later, she got up and looked toward the kitchen. After hesitating for a moment, she didn't dare go in and instead walked toward the bathroom. Li Long couldn't see what was happening inside. He only heard the sound of running water. Qi Xinxin stayed in there for nearly 10 minutes, and when she returned to the living room, there was now a mop in her hand. Watching the surveillance in the master bedroom, Li Long couldn't help raising an eyebrow. He saw Qi Xinxin skillfully start mopping the floor, cleaning up the bloodstains on the ground. She worked in fits and starts, as if she didn't have enough strength. One piece of bread was not enough to replenish her energy. Even so, she still insisted on cleaning the entire living room, wiping places like the coffee table until they were very clean. As for the many dirty clothes piled on the sofa, she put them all away as well. In less than an hour, she had tidied up the whole room until it was neat and orderly, and it looked much brighter. But she knew her limits. There were some things that were obviously for Li Long's use, and she didn't dare touch them carelessly. For example, Li Long's homemade long spear, Li Long's renovation equipment, especially dangerous items like the nail gun. As for the kitchen, she consciously stayed out of it. Only after finishing cleaning the living room did she rest for a while, then go to the second bedroom Li Long had arranged for her. This second bedroom was decorated as a children's room, in a loft bed over desk style, and the area by the window had already been sealed shut. There weren't many books on the solid wood desk under the bed, but there were quite a few tools like wires, screwdrivers, and a soldering iron. Qi Xinshin looked at them curiously, but she didn't touch anything without permission. There was a storage cabinet by the head of the bed, and it was completely empty, with nothing inside. There was, however, a ready-made mattress and bedding on the bed. She tidied the room a little, then lay down wearily. Qi Xinshin curled up on the bed, hugging her shoulders tightly with both hands, listening to the sound of thunder and rain outside the window, as two lines of tears fell from the corners of her eyes. What exactly has happened to this world? She murmured as drowsiness washed over her. In her groggy state, she didn't know how much time had passed before she suddenly jolted awake. "Ah!" she cried out, subconsciously twitching both hands. It was like dreaming of walking downstairs and suddenly missing a step. She had a nightmare in which Zhang Yong opened the door and invited Zhao Ziqiang and the others inside. Zhao Ziqiang gave Zhang Yong a box of biscuits, and Zhang Yong sold himself out. In the dream, Zhao Ziqiang's ferocious face looked as if he wanted to eat someone, forcing her onto the bed and pouncing on her. She screamed and struggled, but couldn't muster any strength. At the critical moment, a spearhead suddenly pierced through Zhao Ziqiang's chest, blood splattering everywhere. She was instantly startled awake and let out a scream instinctively. At this moment, she stared blankly with wide eyes at the ceiling, not yet having come back to her senses. After a moment, her mind finally cleared, and she realized she was no longer in her previous home. That Zhang Yong who made her sick was no longer by her side either. She relaxed inside and couldn't help letting out a long breath of relief. Recalling the appearance of that long spear in the dream, she suddenly realized that wasn't that the same spear Li Long had used just now. Qi Xinshin's expression instantly turned subtle, and her mood improved a little as well. Brother Li isn't a bad person. He's different from Zhao Ziqiang and the others. He even gave me food before. Thinking this to herself, she slowly sat up. Feeling hunger rise from her stomach, she swallowed and slowly got up, walking out of the bedroom to take a look. No one was in the living room, and the master bedroom door was also closed. She let out a sigh of relief. Honestly, she was a little unsure how to face Li Long. With Li Long not there, she instead felt as if a burden had been lifted. Walking into the living room, Qi Xinshin picked up the water cup on the table and wanted to go to the kitchen to pour herself some water. But when she reached the kitchen doorway, she hesitated again. The kitchen is where food is made. If I just go in like this, will he misunderstand and think I'm stealing something to eat? Forget it, I'll wait a bit longer. I'll go in after he wakes up. Thinking of this, she licked her dry lips, turned around, and sat on the sofa in the living room, silently watching the raging wind and rain outside the window. In the gloomy sky, lightning occasionally flashed across, illuminating the sky for an instant, faintly revealing a deathly pale world of torrential rain, with rows of high-rise buildings half submerged in the floodwaters. Boom! After the lightning, a huge clap of thunder rang out. Qi Xinshin was so frightened that her whole body trembled, and instinctively, she wanted to reach out and grab something. But on the sofa, there were only Li Long's clothes that she had folded. She grabbed a t-shirt and clutched it tightly in her hand. A man's scent, full of hormones, drifted into her nose, making her feel a little more at ease unconsciously. She instinctively hugged the clothes to her chest, as if doing so could make her feel safer. Cold. Suddenly, in the dim room, Li Long's voice rang out. Qi Xinshin gave a start and immediately straightened up, instinctively curling her legs. Only after seeing that it was Li Long did she come back to her senses, and she hurriedly said, "Brother Li, you're awake?" Li Long gave a slight nod and said, "It's June now, so it shouldn't be that cold, right? If you feel cold, I'll find you another quilt later." Qi Xinshin froze, lowered her head to glance at the clothes in her hands, and her face instantly turned red. She quickly put down the clothes and said, No, I'm not cold." Li Long said nothing and then walked toward the kitchen, saying, "Hungry? It's 3 in the afternoon now, and we haven't had lunch yet." Qi Xinshin hurriedly stood up and quickly walked to the kitchen, following behind Li Long, her heart rising and falling like waves, while saying ingratiatingly, "Brother Li, let me cook." Li Long did not stop her. He opened the refrigerator and took out a small piece of thawed meat. Seeing this thawed meat, Qi Xinshin's face instantly filled with shock, and she looked at Li Long in disbelief. You still have meat at home?" No wonder she was shocked. The Great Flood had already lasted half a year. The power went out long ago. Who would still have meat at home? Even if they did, it would have rotted by now. She suddenly remembered the scene of Li Long disposing of the body just now. and her face changed instantly as she looked at Li Long in terror. Li Long glanced at her and immediately understood what she was thinking. What are you afraid of? Huh? And no. Qi Xinxin's legs went weak and tears welled up in her eyes. That expression clearly showed she was terrified to the extreme, yet she was forcing herself not to show it. Li Long suddenly turned around and stared straight at her. Do you think this is human flesh? And no, I don't. Qi Xinxin's face turned deathly pale, and she quickly shook her head, desperately shrinking back into the corner. Li Long smiled and stopped scaring her, then took out 2 more thawed potatoes. Look at what's on your left. Qi Xinxin trembled and glanced to the side out of the corner of her eye, instantly freezing. Beside her was actually a shabby old freezer. She looked confused. What was so special about a freezer? But when she looked inside the freezer, her almond-shaped eyes instantly widened into perfect circles. Ice. This freezer still works? How is that possible? Does your home still have electricity? Qi Xinxin looked at Li Long in disbelief, overwhelmed with surprise and delight. The look on her face was like someone who had just won the lottery, full of shock and joy. Li Long pointed toward the balcony outside the window and said, I have a generator here. Qi Xinxin excitedly went around the counter and hurried to the north balcony. Li Long's apartment had a dual balcony layout facing both south and north, with one balcony outside the living room and another outside the kitchen. The generator was placed on the north balcony on the kitchen's north side, while the refrigerator was in the kitchen. Hearing the generator humming, Qi Xinxin's beautiful eyes widened into perfect circles, shining brightly. Her face full of disbelief. Electricity. Your home actually has electricity. This is wonderful, Sob. She cried out in excitement. After all, the entire residential complex had lost power the day after the Great Flood began. At the time, her family's refrigerator had also been full of frozen food, but June was already hot, and once the fridge lost power, there was no way to keep the food frozen. As a result, a lot of the food in the refrigerator went to waste. Otherwise, if they had rationed carefully, it could have lasted for half a year. Now that she saw Li Long actually had a generator at home, of course she was both shocked and delighted. Suddenly, she thought of something and quickly turned to Li Long, saying excitedly, Brotherly, can your generator charge a phone? If it can charge a phone, maybe we can get in touch with the outside world, maybe contact the government. Seeing how hard it was for her to hide her excitement, Li Long gently shook his head. It's useless. I've already tried. Let alone contacting the outside world, you can't even get online now. Aside from radio, basically all communication equipment and network equipment are useless now. Qi Xinxin's smile instantly froze, and she said urgently, How is that possible? It's just a flood. How could there be no signal at all? Signal towers are taller than ordinary buildings, so they couldn't have been damaged, right? After all, she was someone who had gone to college, so she knew that mobile phone signals came from signal towers. Li Long didn't waste words and directly handed his phone to her, saying, If there were a signal, wouldn't I know to call the police and contact the government? See for yourself. Qi Xinxin quickly took the phone. Li Long's phone was fully charged, but the signal bar didn't have a single bar, completely empty. Qi Xinxin couldn't help saying, Could it be the phone? Do you have another phone? I've heard iPhones already have bad signal reception. Do you have an Android too? Li Long was speechless and handed over another phone. This is a Huawei, and it has a SIM card in it. See for yourself. Qi Xinxin tried for quite a while, but she really couldn't find even a single bar of signal. She instantly went blank all over. This. What exactly is going on? What exactly has happened to this world? Sob. She suddenly broke down a little and burst into tears. Li Long took back the phone and said, Something unimaginable has happened to this world. If it were just an ordinary flood, it would be impossible for the government to have no rescue measures at all, and there also wouldn't be absolutely no signal. But half a year has passed, and we haven't seen any government rescue. I still have a radio at home, and I often stay by it listening, but I haven't heard a single piece of rescue news. No one knows when this torrential rain will stop, so we can only endure it bit by bit. Qi Xinxin's faith collapsed. She understood everything Li Long said. In fact, over the past 6 months, many people had been hoping in their hearts that government rescue would arrive. But as time passed, a week, a month, everyone gradually recognized a fact in their hearts. There might be no government rescue. It was just that deep down, they still held on to a tiny bit of hope. The more vulnerable the group, the more they valued this bit of hope, because they knew that only government rescue could keep them alive. Qi Xinxin was one of these people. But Li Long's words completely shattered her hope. Li Long ignored her and peeled the potatoes as he said, You'd better prepare yourself mentally. The world has changed, and you need to change your old way of thinking. Those people outside, Zhao Ziqiang, Zhang Yong, people like them, have already completely lost their moral bottom line. As time goes on and food becomes scarcer and scarcer, they'll become even crazier. If they really have nothing to eat, they might even eat. At this point, Li Long stopped speaking, but the crying Qi Xinxin trembled all over. Of course she understood what Li Long had left unsaid. If they really couldn't find anything to eat, those people would eat people. She said in a trembling voice, "No way. The convenience store is right at the entrance of the residential complex, and lots of things are floating on the water. They can go salvage them. It won't come to eat." Qi Xinxin did not dare say that word. Li Long did not respond, and was also thinking about the issue of salvaging food. But outside, the floodwaters were overwhelming and the wind and rain were raging. There were sewers and underground parking garages everywhere, and hidden currents could form at any time. The slightest carelessness could get someone dragged underwater, and those floodwaters might have come from seawater flowing back inland. Could there be ferocious marine creatures in the water? If it was just salvaging food from the windows of the building, that was one thing, but if it meant leaving the building and going to the convenience store at the entrance of the residential complex to salvage things, the risk would be completely different. Of course, there would definitely be people with no way out who would ultimately choose this path. Li Long himself did not have much food left either. If he hadn't been picking up leftovers in the building, he might also have gone down this path. But now there was still an important question he hadn't figured out. What exactly was going on with the crayfish that ate fish and the human who smashed a wall apart with bare hands? Was it related to the great flood outside? What kind of risk would this situation bring to him? These were all questions he needed to think about. What was already known was that there was something unusual in the flood, and in the building, there were strange people as well. But Li Long had still not discovered exactly what was different about them. As he washed the potatoes, he thought about these questions. At this moment, Qi Xinxin had also gradually calmed down. Seeing Li Long peeling potatoes, she hurriedly wiped away her tears, walked over to his side, and said, "Brotherly, peeling them like that is too wasteful. Let me do it." Li Long glanced at her and said, "Calm down. Sorry, I was just too desperate," Qi Xinxin said. Li Long gave a slight nod and handed the potato to her. Right now everyone is in despair, but survival is instinct. There aren't many people who truly want to die. And in the current situation, dying is easy, while staying alive is the hardest thing. Qi Xinxin silently nodded. Holding the knife in her hand, she gently scraped the potato skin instead of using a peeler. That way, she could make sure the potato was wasted as little as possible. Seeing this, Li Long greatly appreciated Qi Xinxin's frugal behavior. He was used to being rough and clumsy, and hadn't thought of such a meticulous way to save food. Beep beep beep. Qi Xinxin skillfully began slicing the potatoes. One look at her knife skills showed she was someone who cooked often. Li Long watched her busy at work, secretly praising her in his heart. Given his previous circumstances, a pretty and virtuous female college student like this, let alone cooking for him before the Great Flood, probably wouldn't even have given him a second glance. As he thought about it, his gaze unconsciously drifted toward Qi Xinxin's chest. That proud curve kept swaying at high frequency along with the rhythm of her chopping vegetables. It was almost like the Great Flood outside, surging endlessly, waves upon waves. Li Long truly admired the quality of that shirt. The collar was practically about to split open, yet the buttons just wouldn't pop off. He really wanted to ask what brand that shirt was. The quality was just that good. Suddenly, that beep 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 sound became somewhat unnatural, and its rhythm started speeding up and slowing down. Qi Xinxin seemed to change all at once from a skilled little cook into a kitchen novice. Li Long looked up and saw that although Qi Xinxin still had her head down chopping vegetables, a blush had already appeared on her face. The loose strands of hair hanging down were dampened with sweat, smoothly sticking to her temples, adding a few more touches of charm to her. Li Long instantly understood that the look he had been giving her had caused a misunderstanding. He gave a light cough and said, "You go ahead and cook. I'll head to the living room first." Okay. Qi Xinxin responded in a voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz, and only after hearing Li Long's footsteps fade away did she finally breathe a sigh of relief and quietly look up toward the living room. The blush on her face gradually faded, but her thoughts were rising and falling, and her mood became complicated and hard to describe. She subconsciously looked down at her chest, feeling a little aggrieved, yet also somewhat relieved. What aggrieved her was that her figure always drew strange looks from others. What relieved her was that thanks to them, otherwise at a time of disaster like this, Li Long outside might not necessarily have taken her in. If Li Long knew what she was thinking, he would definitely scoff in disdain. Is Brother Long really that vulgar a person? Pulling back his gaze, Li Long sat back down on the sofa. His mind was still on the matter of the mutant creatures. Just as he was lost in thought, Qi Xinshin came over carrying a plate of stir-fried shredded pork with potatoes and called softly, "Brotherly, the meal is ready." Li Long came back to his senses and got up to walk toward the dining table. Qi Xinshin quickly set the plate on the table and attentively pulled out a chair for him. "Brotherly, try my cooking." Qi Xinshin hurriedly handed him the chopsticks and looked at him expectantly. Li Long took the chopsticks and tasted a bite. Instantly, he frowned and said, "Why is it so bland?" Qi Xinshin's face immediately turned pale, and she quickly said, "Brotherly, in a situation like this, salt and soy sauce are both very hard to find again, so I didn't dare use too much." Li Long fell silent for a moment. Qi Xinshin truly was a diligent and thrifty girl. A person cannot lack salt for a long time, especially in the weather of June and July, and he also exercised and sweated often. That meant he was using up salt every day, so salt absolutely could not be skimped on. He had stocked up on a lot of salt before, and now he could still go out and loot buildings, so he might even be able to find more salt. He looked at Qi Xinshin and said, "From now on, you don't need to save on salt. I panic bought a lot before, so it's enough for the time being." Qi Xinshin quickly nodded. "Okay, I understand. Brotherly, I'll go remake it." Li Long waved his hand. "Let's leave it like this for now. Where's the rice?" "Oh right, I'll go serve it." Qi Xinshin quickly dished out the rice, a full large bowl, even scraping off the crispy rice from the bottom of the pot. Not wasting a single grain. She carried the bowl to Li Long and said ingratiatingly, "Big brotherly, here's the rice." Smelling the fragrance of the rice, along with the bursts of meat aroma coming from the table, Qi Xinshin's mouth kept watering. She couldn't help swallowing and said, "Here." Li Long took the bowl and glanced at her. "How much do you usually eat?" Qi Xinshin hurriedly said, "I eat very little. The bread from this morning was enough. I'm not hungry at all right now. Big brotherly, you don't need to worry about me." She was afraid Li Long would dislike her for eating too much and send her away. But the moment she finished speaking, a rumbling sound came from her flat stomach. It instantly made her fair face flush red with embarrassment. Li Long saw it all and said calmly, "Go get another bowl." Qi Xinshin froze for a moment, not daring to ask more, and immediately brought over another small bowl. As she handed it over, she said self-reproachfully, "This is my fault. This much rice could be divided into several meals. I'll portion some out and put it in the fridge right now." As she spoke, she took the initiative to divide the rice. However, just as the rice paddle was brought in front of Li Long reached out and grabbed her fair hand. At that instant of contact, Qi Xinshin reacted as if shocked by electricity, let out a cry, and quickly pulled her hand back. A blush instantly appeared on that fair face, and her eyes were full of panic. Li Long took the rice paddle and scooped out a little less than half of the rice from the bowl, saying, "Eat." He said nothing more, picked up his chopsticks, and started eating directly. Qi Xinshin, however, raised her head in disbelief, looking at Li Long and then at the rice in the small bowl. She asked in astonishment, "Is this for me?" When she was at home, Zhang Yong wouldn't even let her have the seasoning packet from instant noodles. Now that Li Long had suddenly given her a bowl of rice, she hardly dared believe it was real. "Aren't you going to eat?" How could Qi Xinshin possibly hold back any longer? After being hungry for several days, the little bread she had eaten that morning had long since been digested. At this moment, she could no longer bother being cautious, and immediately picked up the bowl, grabbed her chopsticks, and said excitedly, "Eat. I'll eat." She shoveled rice into her mouth and spoke indistinctly. As the rice entered her mouth, before she even had time to chew, that long-lost fragrance of rice hit her taste buds. She swallowed it hurriedly, feeling it was unbelievably delicious. Her stomach, burning like fire, seemed to be filled with food all at once, and immediately felt much better. As she ate, tears pattered down, and she suddenly began to cry. Li Long couldn't help stopping, turned to look at her, and asked, "Why are you crying?" "No, nothing, it's delicious. I just haven't had rice in too long. The rice you lent me last time was all gone half a month ago. During this time, I've been getting by on instant noodles, biscuits, snacks, and things like that, one meal a day. I'm just too excited, big brotherly, thank you." As she cried, she choked out all the suffering she had endured during this period. It was as if she had suddenly found someone to confide in, and she poured it all out in one breath. After Li Long heard it all, he sighed inwardly. Zhang Yong really was a bastard. He had food at home, yet he hid it all away. In the face of a life-and-death crisis, human nature was laid bare. This kind of punk really can't be relied on. There was no doubt Qi Xinxin was a good girl. With someone like Zhang Yong, Li Long would have kicked him flying long ago. Yet Qi Xinxin had endured it. Moreover, while eating, Qi Xinxin was very restrained, only keeping her head down and eating rice, not reaching for the plate of shredded pork with potatoes. Li Long couldn't stand watching anymore and said, "Eat some dishes, don't just eat rice." Qi Xinxin quickly shook her head and said, "No, no, it's fine. I can just eat rice, brotherly. You eat these dishes and save the rest for dinner tonight." Helpless, Li Long forcibly picked up a big chopstick full of food for her, and only then did she thank him nervously. The meal ended just like that. Before Li Long could stand up, Qi Xinxin was the first to get up and said, "I'll clean up. Brotherly, don't move, leave these to me." Li Long let her go to the kitchen to wash up, his gaze sweeping over her graceful figure, involuntarily stopping on the torn stockings beneath her short skirt. Her long, straight legs showed a patch of fair skin through the holes in the stockings. The faint marks where they squeezed her gave off an inexplicable sense of excitement. He took a deep breath and stood up, walking toward the kitchen. Hearing the footsteps, Qi Xinxin instinctively wanted to turn around. But before she could, a strong masculine presence suddenly came over her. Li Long had already hugged her from behind. Qi Xinxin's whole body trembled, and she immediately panicked. "Brotherly, you." She fearfully pressed down on Li Long's large hand, wanting to move it away, yet afraid of making him angry. She only heard heavy breathing by her ear. "Keep washing." Qi Xinxin trembled all over, feeling the man lower his head into the hair at the back of her neck, breathing in the fragrance of her hair. She only felt goosebumps rise all over her body, and her legs actually went a little weak. "Brotherly, don't," she said in a tearful voice, clearly feeling that the man's large hand was already moving downward. She did not dare resist at all. Li Long only felt a burning heat in his heart, as if he wanted to crush and tear the woman apart. However, the next second, a tear suddenly fell onto his arm. He abruptly paused and slowly turned the woman around. He saw Qi Xinxin crying silently. All his desire instantly died away, and he withdrew his wandering hand. Li Long frowned tightly, a trace of shock and doubt arising in his heart. How could I force someone to do this kind of thing? How would that be any different from Zhao Ziqiang and the others? Regaining his senses, Li Long took a deep breath, suppressed the desire in his heart, and stepped back a few paces, washed the dishes. With that, he turned and went back to the living room. Qi Xinxin stared blankly at his departing back, her whole body going limp as she slumped down by the sink. In the bathroom, Li Long splashed some water on his face and felt much clearer. "Have I been holding it in too long?" Li Long frowned, also feeling apologetic about his own instincts. Although he didn't mind if something happened, this kind of thing still had to be consensual. If he had to force it, he wouldn't be able to get past that moral line himself. Anyone who acts brutally is a beast, and there are too many beasts in this building. Li Long shook his head and returned to the living room. He glanced at the kitchen and saw that Qi Xinxin was no longer there. Then he looked at the tightly shut door of the second bedroom. Li Long knew that the girl was probably badly frightened and was likely crying in the room right now. But he did not go to comfort her. Then he walked to the balcony. Borrowing the faint light, Li Long began his afternoon workout. First came 500 push-ups, followed by pull-ups. 1, 2. As he counted silently, he thought about how to deal with Zhao Ziqiang and the others outside next. Zhao Ziqiang's group would definitely not let the matter drop. It probably wouldn't be long before they came for revenge. By himself, it was impossible for him to keep watch on the doors and windows forever. After all, he also needed rest. This was also why he had taken in Qi Xinxin. With 2 people taking shifts, only then could he ensure time to rest. In less than half an hour, after finishing 500 push-ups, Li Long was already drenched in sweat, and his chest, arms, and shoulders were all flushed and swollen with blood. Fortunately, he wasn't short on food. Otherwise, training like this would not only fail to improve his physique, it would probably wear his body out. After resting for a bit and drinking some water, he started doing pull-ups. While Li Long was working out, the door to the second bedroom quietly opened a crack. Through the gap, Qi Xinxin watched Li Long, his muscles bulging and his body soaked in sweat as he exercised, and couldn't help covering her mouth. How is he this muscular? She thought in shock. Li Long looked quite lean, but she hadn't expected that once he took off his clothes, he'd have such a solidly muscular body. She couldn't help recalling the ambiguous moment in the kitchen just now, and a blush immediately appeared on her fair face. Qi Xinxin looked at Li Long with mixed emotions, secretly thinking that no wonder he had been so impatient and impulsive. Over the past half hour, she had already prepared herself mentally. She understood very well that Li Long had taken her in and even let her eat. So how could she possibly not have to give something in return? Did she really think that doing some housework would be enough to get precious food? Of course, she wasn't that naive. And the only thing she could really offer was probably herself. It was just that what happened earlier had been so sudden that she wasn't prepared and had resisted instinctively. After returning to the room, she had actually become afraid and regretful. What if Li Long got angry and kicked her out? Then she really would have nowhere to go. She knew very well what kind of torment someone with her looks would suffer if she ended up outside. The miserable state of the female neighbor from before still lingered in her mind, and sometimes she would even wake up from nightmares and fright. So if she had a choice, of course she'd choose to serve only one man. At least, Brotherly has treated me pretty well. Thinking of how he had already been aroused just now, only to be interrupted by her crying and forcibly stop himself, she knew that Li Long was a good person. If it had been anyone else, how could they possibly have held back? At the very least, he respected her and gave her room to choose. While her thoughts ran wild, Li Long had already finished his pull-ups. Feeling soreness in the muscles of his back and shoulders, he pressed them a little, but he couldn't quite reach, so he had to use the corner of the wall to stretch his shoulders. At this moment, Qi Xinxin finally worked up the courage and walked out of the room. Hearing the sound, Li Long turned back and glanced at her. She was still wearing her torn stockings, and the black short skirt hugged her butt, while her tight shirt held up her ample breasts, still as breathtaking as ever. Li Long said nothing and continued stretching. This immediately made Qi Xinxin feel uneasy, like a child who had done something wrong, and she walked out with her head lowered, stopping about 2 meters to Li Long's side, and said softly, "Brotherly, sorry." Li Long wiped away his sweat, glanced at her, and said, "There's nothing to apologize for." Qi Xinxin didn't dare look at him. I just wasn't ready yet." Li Long nodded lightly. "I was impulsive too. I'm the one who should be apologizing." What he needed was a partner, not a tool to vent his desires on. So he wouldn't force her. And when Qi Xinxin heard him say that, she was immediately even more moved. Seeing Li Long loosening up his muscles and joints, she hurriedly said, "Brotherly, I used to do spa massage often and know a few massage techniques. Let me help massage you." Hearing this, Li Long immediately became interested, raising an eyebrow. "You know how to do that too?" As he spoke, he got up and sat down on the sofa. Qi Xinxin walked behind the sofa and reached out to start massaging him. While massaging him, she said, "I just watched them do it a lot and learned a little. If it feels uncomfortable, tell me." Li Long smiled, breathing in the woman's fragrance, and said with a smile, "My muscles are extremely tense, so it's a bit strenuous. Use a little more force." "Okay." Qi Xinxin seemed to have found a place where she could be useful and nodded repeatedly with delight, massaging him harder. As she touched his strong muscles with her own hands, a blush couldn't help appearing on her face. She had never seen such a magnificent physique before. She hurriedly pushed away her wild thoughts and asked, "Brotherly, with things like this now, we're all eating less. If you don't conserve your strength, why do you still work out every day?" Li Long felt the woman's slender fingers, closed his eyes and enjoyed it. Hearing this, he replied, "Look at that bunch of lunatics outside, and you should understand that the world has changed. The law can no longer restrain those beasts. The only thing that can protect us now is our fists. If we don't train our bodies properly, how can we fight those people with our lives?" Hearing this, Qi Xinxin couldn't help thinking of Zhang Yong. Wasn't he just the kind who only hid at home, a typical coward? And then look at Zhao Ziqiang. Relying on his burly build, he gathered a bunch of lackeys around him, which is why he can wreak havoc in this kind of environment. She immediately found Li Long's words very convincing. At the same time, she let out a soft sigh. Seeing her sigh, Li Long asked doubtfully, "Why are you sighing? Was what I said wrong?" Qi Xinxin shook her head. "No, brotherly, you're right. In times like these, the only way to survive is by relying on your fists. I just think that in this regard, we women are naturally the weaker ones, not like you men." Hearing this, Li Long said, "In peaceful times, men and women are equal, but when it truly comes to chaotic times, women can only rely on men in the end. In this respect, you women are indeed at a disadvantage." Hearing this, Qi Xinxin's heart stirred. That's right, women are the weaker ones at a time like this. With her good figure and pretty face, if she didn't find a reliable man at a time like this, how could she survive? Trash like Zhang Yong, who could even sell out his own girlfriend for food, was definitely unreliable. But Brotherly was different. Not only was he strong and sturdy, with food at home, The key point was that he had a good heart, and he was also her neighbor across the hall. What was there left not to understand? As she thought this, she kept giving herself psychological encouragement in her mind. After a moment, she suddenly said softly and shyly, "Brotherly, lie down, and I'll massage your back." Hearing this, Li Long raised an eyebrow and laughed to himself. "Brother Chong, what do we do now?" On the 27th floor, a group of men led by Zhao Ziqiang had gathered in the living room. The one speaking was Zhao Ziqiang's confidant, Chen Xiaobin. Chen Xiaobin had previously been a property security guard in his 20s and had started working security early, decades ahead of others in retirement. Before the Great Flood, he had always followed Zhao Ziqiang's lead. After the flood, Zhao Ziqiang displayed formidable personal fighting ability, so of course he was the first to follow him. This group of security guards could be said to be Zhao Ziqiang's most trusted followers. Since none of them were homeowners, they naturally followed Zhao Ziqiang around wholeheartedly in his mischief. At this moment, Zhao Ziqiang's face was dark as iron. Looking at the people around him, his eyes flickered as he said, "I didn't expect this Li Long to have some skills. This time I was careless and got everyone hurt. But it doesn't matter. We'll keep gathering the other floors first, then force that kid out." "Brother Chong, what about Old Huang's wife and child?" Chen Xiaobin asked. Old Huang was the man with the triangular eyes whom Li Long had killed earlier. He had originally been the rooftop foreman, responsible for making the elderly, weak, sick, and disabled upstairs carry water. He was also a security guard, but he was older than Chen Xiaobin and had married early, renting a place in Tangshianyuan. His whole family lived in this building. If he weren't also a tenant and naturally in the same camp as Zhao Ziqiang would never have taken in a guy dragging along a whole family. But while this bastard was out this morning to drag off a woman, Li Long pierced his neck with a single spear thrust. Zhao Ziqiang glanced at Chen Xiaobin, and seeing his shifty gaze, immediately understood. Old Huang was also an old brother of ours. And now that he's dead, his wife and children still need someone to look after them. That room of his will be assigned to you, Xiaobin. Xiaobin, take good care of Old Huang's family, understand? Chen Xiaobin was instantly overjoyed and repeatedly assured him, "Don't worry, Brother Chong, I'll definitely take good care of Old Huang's wife and children, haha." Another underling at the side hurriedly added, "Brother Chong, I heard there are 2 women in the hallway on the 30th floor, also Old Huang's women, so?" Zhao Ziqiang waved a big hand and laughed. "You all can divide them up yourselves." Hee. That underling happily rubbed his hands together and let out a silly laugh. The other underlings were also all smiles. Old Huang's death, though pitiful, also meant that Old Huang's share of rations would be divided among them, so they would not feel sad over Old Huang's death. They were not very familiar with each other to begin with, and were brought together entirely by Zhao Ziqiang's personal strength. Even Chen Xiaobin, who was also a security guard, had no real friendship with Old Huang. The two weren't even on the same shift team. They only occasionally ran into each other during shift handovers and merely nodded. And although Old Huang was skinny, he had no shortage of lust. After following Zhao Ziqiang, he seized quite a few female homeowners. Chen Xiaobin had long been unhappy about it, and now that he was dead, all the better. The 2 women Chen Xiaobin had his eye on could finally be his. By the way, where are Zhou Hua and Wu Li? As if recalling something, Zhao Ziqiang suddenly swept his gaze around and asked. Chen Xiaobin also turned back to look around and said, "They just came back with us a moment ago. Where did they go?" "Lu Wei, Hu Jun, have you seen them?" The 2 who were called snapped back to their senses, as if they had just been thinking about something. The man called Lu Wei hurriedly said, "Brother Chong, I just saw the 2 of them go out." Hu Jun immediately said, "Should I call them over?" Zhao Ziqiang nodded, "Call them over." Hu Jun quickly pushed open the door and saw Zhou Hua and Wu Li talking about something in low voices. Hearing the noise, the 2 of them immediately shut their mouths and turned back warily at the same time. Seeing that it was Hu Jun, Zhou Hua smiled and said, "Hu Jun, what brings you here?" Hu Jun looked at the 2 suspiciously and said, "Brother Chong is looking for you. What are you doing out here?" Zhou Hua casually said, "There are too many people in the room, so we came out for some air. Does Brother Chong want something from us?" "No idea. Get in here quickly." Zhou Hua and Wu Li exchanged a glance and walked into the room. As soon as they entered, they saw Zhao Ziqiang and everyone else all staring at them in unison. Zhou Hua's eyes flickered as he smiled and said, "Brother Chong, you were looking for us? What did you 2 go off to do?" Zhao Ziqiang asked expressionlessly. Zhou Hua smiled and said, "Went out for some air." "I wasn't asking you. Wu Li, you tell me." Zhao Ziqiang cut Zhou Hua off. He knew that Zhou Hua had once been a small entrepreneurial boss, quick-witted, the sort who could lie without batting an eye. Hearing this, Wooly looked a little nervous and forced a smile. Brother Chong, President Zhou and I just went out for some air. We lost brothers this time, and we're feeling upset. Zhao Ziqiang narrowed his eyes and said, "Oh, am I making you feel stifled here? Or have you started having other thoughts?" "No, absolutely not, Brother Chong. If it weren't for you, I'd already be dead, Brother Chong. Don't worry, I would never betray you," Wooly said hurriedly. Zhao Ziqiang sneered, looked at Zhou Hua, and said, "Old Zhou, I know you used to be a small startup boss, daring and capable, with a good head on your shoulders. But if you set your mind on using those tricks on me, don't blame me for not being polite." Zhou Hua turned pale and quickly said, "Brother Chong, listen to what you're saying. My life, Zhou Hua's life, belongs to you, Brother Chong. How would I dare betray you?" Zhao Ziqiang suddenly slammed the table and said viciously, "Well said. In that case, you two go to the 16th floor again this afternoon and keep smashing the door while Li Long isn't paying attention." As soon as he finished speaking, Zhou Hua and Wu Li's expressions changed drastically. The news that old Huang had died at Li Long's hands had already spread, and the reason the two of them had been whispering together was precisely because of this. Now sending them to smash the door was no different from sending them to their deaths. Zhang Hua quickly said, "Brother Chong, that kid is not only ruthless, he also has gas cylinders and gasoline. If he's pushed too far, he might even drag us down with him." Wu Li also said nervously, "That's right, Brother Chong. This matter needs to be considered carefully in the long term." Zhao Ziqiang sneered, "You two are unwilling? Old Zhou, Old Wu, this is all the food I have here. You follow me but refuse to do any work, so you can't just eat for nothing, can you?" Zhou Hua's thoughts raced, and he grew anxious inside, when suddenly he had an idea and said, "Brother Chong, I have another way. We don't need to break down the door. We can still kill that kid just the same." Zhao Ziqiang raised an eyebrow. "What way?" Zhou Hua said, "We can tear down the wall. Opposite his place seems to be Zhang Yang's home. We can first take over Zhang Yang's place. Brother Chong, aren't you just interested in Qi Xinxin? Dig through from Zhang Yang's place and break straight into that kid's home. Kill two birds with one stone." Zhou Hua's words made Zhao Ziqiang show a thoughtful expression. Seeing that Zhao Ziqiang was tempted, Zhou Hua pressed on while the iron was hot. "Brother Chong, the reason we can't do anything to that kid right now is because his home has a security door. He can light gas cylinders and spray gasoline from behind the door, and we can't stop it. But if we break straight through the wall, everyone can rush in together. Let's see what that kid can do then. Besides, Zhang Yang's place might even have food. Since everyone has to sweep the building anyway, we might as well take over Zhang Yang's place first. What do you think?" What he said was logical and well-founded, and Zhao Ziqiang was indeed somewhat tempted. Compared with Li Long, who was tough as nails, that coward Zhang Yong was much easier to handle. More importantly, sending Zhou Hua and Wu Li to smash the door would most likely just get them killed. If Li Long pulled any tricks, he was a little afraid he would no longer be able to keep his men steady. Because Li Long was currently the strongest resistance fighter in this building, and it would be easy for him to stir up thoughts of defection in others. Thinking of this, he suddenly burst out laughing and said, "Haha, just look at that. No wonder he's a boss. That brain of his works better than all of ours. Fine, we'll do it old Zhou's way and take Zhang Yang's place first." Everyone cheered repeatedly, rubbing their hands together as they headed upstairs again. "Old Zhao? Old Zhao." In the open corridor on the 30th floor, torrential rain drifted in and pounded on the tent. Wang Xian stood outside Zhao Yoji's tent and called softly. Only then did Zhao Yoji unzip the tent, see Wang Xian, and ask, "What time is it?" "Almost 8. Zhao Yoji nodded. "Get some rest. I'll take the night watch." Wang Xian looked around and said, "Not so fast. I need to talk to you about something first." Zhao Yoji paused, then immediately understood and quickly walked out of the tent. The two of them went near the stairwell. After making sure no one was around, Wang Xian lowered his voice and said, "Did you hear the commotion this morning?" Zhao Yoji nodded. "It was so intense, how could I not hear it? Zhao Ziqiang got into it with that kid on the 16th floor and actually suffered a big loss." Wang Xian said, "Who would have thought that kid would be so ruthless? Zhao Ziqiang probably won't dare touch him for the time being." Zhao Yoji's expression changed slightly, and he said softly, "Otherwise, should we go down and try to get some fish or something again?" Wang Xian shook his head. Zhao Ziqiang's people are guarding the 9th floor. No one else has any chance to catch fish at all, and even if they do, those people will snatch them away. "Then what do you mean?" "I want to ask the person on the 16th floor for help. He'll lend you food? Zhao Yoji said with a bitter smile. Not borrow food. I want to work with him. If our group doesn't band together for warmth soon. If this goes on, we're really going to be bullied to death by Zhao Ziqiang. It's not like we haven't contacted other people before, but you've seen that group too. They won't trust outsiders. And as long as Zhao Ziqiang brings out a little food, they'll immediately defect and might even betray us. By then, Zhao Yoji let out a soft sigh. It's not like they hadn't done that before, but Zhao Ziqiang defeated them one by one. In the end, it's because they weren't familiar with each other and had no solid foundation of trust. Wang Xian said softly, this time it's different. The one on the 16th floor is already locked in a fight to the death with Zhao Ziqiang, so he definitely won't switch sides. We don't want his food either. We just want everyone to unite and resist that bastard Zhao Ziqiang, so that we won't even have to be. Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly heard a noise coming from the stairwell and immediately shut his mouth. Zhao Yoji also became alert in an instant, immediately pulling out a dagger from his waist and turning to look at the stairwell. At the stairway entrance, he saw a thin figure walking down, saying, "Could you count me in, Xiao Wei?" Only by the dim moonlight did Zhao Yoji recognize her. It was actually Ding Wei, the female homeowner whom old Huang and the others treated as a plaything. Wang Xian's expression also changed slightly. Why did you come over here? Ding Wei's eyes were full of hatred as she said, Brother Wang, Uncle Zhao, if you're going to deal with Zhao Ziqiang, can you take me with you? Wang Xian said nothing and exchanged a look with Zhao Yoji. Zhao Yoji suddenly asked, what about your companion Xiao Lu? Weren't you two together with? Ding Wei fell silent for a moment. Dead. Wang Xian immediately frowned. Dead? How is that possible? He was in the corridor the whole time. I didn't hear any commotion at all. Ding Wei gave a miserable smile. I killed him. What? Wang Xian and Zhao Yoji's expressions changed instantly. Instinctively, they took a step back, putting some distance between themselves and Ding Wei. Wang Xian couldn't help asking, why? Ding Wei said softly, old Huang is dead, and Lu Yan lost her backer, so she was planning to find her next man.